Hello, my name is Kieran Glover, and I'm going to be going through a presentation on genetic algorithms. Now, before we get into what genetic algorithms are, I want you to imagine an antelope standing in the middle of a grass field, and there's a cheetah sneaking up on it. Then, all of a sudden, the cheetah gets up and sprints and catches the antelope before it can escape. Now, I have a question for you. How can a cheetah run so fast? Well, if you go do some digging, you'll find that cheetahs have enlarged nostrils, lungs, hearts, and arteries to be able to supply oxygen to the body. They have a flexible spine and flattened rib cage that allow the rear feet to reach further forward. They have long, slender legs and semi-retractable claws, which give them more traction, and a long tail for steering. Now, this is not by accident. Cheetahs have evolved and gone through a process of natural selection that have allowed them to develop these traits that'll make them run fast. They need to run fast in order to get their food supply, with the slower cheetahs dying off and not being able to breed. Now, genetic algorithms are used to fix optimization problems, but they are based on this process of natural selection and mimic the biological evolution that the cheetah went through. So, it could be turning a cell into a single-cell organism into a fully developed human, or turning a randomly generated word to the desired word that we want, and that is what I made my code do, but we'll get into this more later. I broke the structure of a genetic algorithm into 6 different components, and they are generating the population, assigning the fitness, analyzing the population, breeding, mutating, and these 4 just go into a cycle, all while outputting useful data that you use to optimize your issues. Now, some terms to know before we go more in depth is a species, which is a variant of an object that holds a chromosome. A chromosome is the genetics of a species. It is transferred through breeding, so it holds all the attributes. Population is a collection of different species. These are used to breed together the different species. The fitness is used to describe the ability for a type of species to survive, so the species with a higher fitness have a better chance to survive and pass the genetics through the next generation. Finally, generation just counts how many past populations there have been. Now, let us go more in depth to generating the population. Now, to generate the population, it's fairly simple. You generate a collection of species with randomly generated attributes. Now, this is important because the randomly generated attributes give it a better chance to test out multiple possible solutions for optimization and eventually find the best one that is made there. So, for example, you could get a randomly generated words with different characters in them. And next you assign the fitness. Now, you assign fitness, it's based on parameters that are desired, and it simulates the survivability of your species. Now, that's going back to the cheetah reference, that's how fast a cheetah can go, because slow cheetahs would not be able to eat and not be able to survive, and therefore they would not breed and pass to the next generation, while the fast cheetahs did. This creates, so a cheetah's fitness value is dependent on how fast they were, if that is an example you want. Next, you have to analyze the population. Now, this is also corresponds to outputting your useful data. So, a basic analyzation of the population would be to check if the conditional statement you run for is checked, or go for an indefinite amount of times and output your useful data as you go if a condition for completion is not able to be present. After you analyze the population, you go into breeding. Now, breeding, as we said before, is based on the fitness, with the higher fitness breeding first, or breeding more often than the lower fitness. Now, this is done through a process. It simulates the natural selection with, that's what I said. So this is done with a process of roulette selection. Now, I have this diagram here. Roulette selection gets its name from a roulette wheel because it's like spinning a wheel and it's wherever it lands on. Now, so for example here, we have 4 species, all with different fitness values. You can read them yourself, with a total fitness of 200. Now, based on the 200, each species is given a percentage of the total fitness. So, for example, species 1, if you look at the blue part of the pie chart, has a 50% chance of being selected if we were to spin that pie chart around like a roulette table. Now, roulette selection simulates this by randomly selecting a number between 0 and the total fitness. Then it goes through each species, subtracting their total fitness until it goes below 0 or equal to 0, and it selects that fitness. So, for example, we have the 155 here. So we'll go through the first species, subtracts 100, which is their fitness, and it is not below 0, so it continues, subtracts 50, still not below 0, and finally it subtracts 40, and the value is negative 35, and it's below 0, so it will choose index 2 for it, which is species number 3. Now, you can see that if we were to say take out species number 4, the percentage chance of each species changes depending on their fitness because the total fitness changed. So the blue now has a 53% chance instead of 50 because the total fitness is left while it stayed the same. So by using this strategy, you'll find 2 chromosomes that you breed together with, preferably with, they are preferred. The selection process prefers the higher ones, creating the bias, while still low fitness will be able to survive, but at less rate. So, once you get your 2 binary chromosomes, you want to breed them together. Now, this has gone through a process of crossover, and crossover can be done many different ways. The example I'm going to show you is by a single point crossover. So, you choose one point on the binary string, for example, index 8 here, you can see I highlighted that, and you take those 2 values afterwards, that index, and you swap them with each other. So it's pretty basic, and it produces 2 offsprings for your 2 parents using this crossover. Now, there are multiple ways you could do this, such as 2-point crossover or arithmetic crossover, but this is one of the most basic ways to breed your 2 strings together. Then, after they've been breeded, you want to mutate them. Now, this is to take into account some optimization features that may have not been present in the first, and just the natural mutation that's seen in natural selection. So it goes bit by bit in your binary sequence, and each bit has a chance to either mutate, and that chance is fairly low, so for the sake of the code, I'm going to say example of 0.001, and we have our bit here. So it goes through it, it checks it, it is all good, and then, we're going to mutate this bit here. So to mutate, you either change a 0 into a 1, or a 1 into a 0, and that is your mutation. So that 0, if we continue on, will now be a 1 at the bottom, and everything else is the same. So this is a low chance, so it does not impact too drastically on the searching for prime optimization, but it still has an effect in case the original population does not account for everything. Now this cycle continues, all while outputting your useful data to use. And let's look at this in action for the example of the code that I wrote up. So, for my code, I started with a string, randomly generated population of strings, as I said in the beginning. And I had a desired string. Now, that string, let's say, is fast, like the cheetah. So, I have to generate the population, which I did. Next, I assign the fitness. So, I would compare the words generated to fast and see how close they were alphabetic, or each character is alphabetically, being that each attribute of the word is the characters. And then I would analyze it to see if I got fast, breed and mutate till it would be closer to fast, such as fats, and then I'll compare that, and then I'll go breed and mutate again, and finally I shall output fast. Now this is very simple code, and if you want to check out a more in-depth view at this simple application of genetic algorithms, I have another video posted on my YouTube channel that you can check out. I'll put the link of that in the description. But this is all good, but that was a pretty basic example of when genetic algorithms used. I found that they can be used in any scenario, calling for indefinite output optimized to definite parameters. This is when your solution space is very large and you have a way that you're able to calculate a fitness value of it, and this is when genetic algorithms are best used to apply. So, an early example of this used was in designing train routes and optimizing those. So they would randomly generate a population of train routes and then simulate them to see how efficient they were, assign them fitness, then just breed them together to eventually find out what good optimization techniques were. Next, a current example that's being used today is the optimization of air wings. So this is where it will randomly generate shapes to be tested as air wings. Then it would be simulated in air tunnel simulator, see how much resistance it gets, to assign fitness based on that. Then it would breed with the other air wings to ultimately output some hopefully optimize air wings with some new design strategies that have not been seen before. And finally, it could be used in trading optimization. So it could be used generate a random population of trading strategies, then based on history. It could run a simulation of what